The gospel lesson today is one of those things when you run across it in the gospel, it's really, I think, easy to understand what's happening in that time, in that place, which is always sort of step one of reading anything in the Bible. But it's really hard to pick it up and be like, so what does this have to do with our life? Because we all sort of get it, that you have all these Jewish dietary laws, Jesus' disciples aren't following them, this made the Pharisees and the scribes all upset, so they go complain to Jesus, and Jesus is like, seriously, you guys aren't getting this at all. And then talks about, evil doesn't come from how you eat a sandwich, it comes from what is in your heart, right? It's not how you do the ritual, it's what you do daily. It's who you are, not what, again, how you eat your sandwich or whether or not you remember to wash your hands. It's not doing the rituals, it's the things behind it. That's important. And for most of us, we're like, good, got it, time to go. But if we just take that lesson, we've missed the deeper message. See, the deeper message is really this idea that what is external to us, right? How it is we follow our cultural rules, our societal rules, our church rules is very much secondary to what is in our heart, to who we are. But what we do with who we are is what is in charge. Let me explain. A lot of folks will say, look at folks and make a quick judgment, right? Look at how you dress, look at how you act, and judge, are you worthy, unworthy, successful, unsuccessful, good, bad, whatever, right? But it's usually off a very superficial set of things. A great example. When I was a financial advisor, I had these two different clients. One was a realtor, one is a lawyer. They come to me, and they're both having budgetary problems. I'm working through budgets with them, and as I'm going through their budget, I find that the realtor is literally leasing a new car every single year, and the lawyer has a closet full of Italian suits. Okay? So as a good financial advisor, I push back, and to both of them, I'm like, seriously, if you want a budget that, works, I'd stop leasing a new car every year, or stop buying Italian suits. How is this hard? Both of them later came back to me with the math and the facts of how they had to. See, the realtor was able to prove, since, she shows clients in her car, she drives them around, that if she didn't have a brand new car, people didn't think she was successful. They wouldn't buy from her. The lawyer was able to show, through studies and math and all these sorts of things, if he had an old suit or a suit off the rack or one that didn't quite fit, people assumed he was a bad lawyer. Now, we all know that just because you wear a nice suit does not make you a good lawyer, right? We all know because you have a nice car that does not make you a good realtor, right? And yet, many of us, if we think about it, we use those sort of lazy ways to quickly judge folks, right? We use these lazy ways to be like, oh, this person's successful, or that person isn't, or this person's good at their job, or that person isn't. Now, when I bring this sort of thing up, you usually get two pushbacks. One is, pastor, I meet a lot of people. I got to make decisions quickly. I do my best, but yeah, I can only superficially know a lot of the folks I interact with. How do I pick a realtor? I got thousands of them to pick from. How do I pick a lawyer? I got thousands of them to pick from. I got to be able to make decisions quickly. So these are sort of, I don't believe that just because you have a good suit makes you a good lawyer, but it is a good sort of proxy, right? Or people push back and say, but what harm is there in doing that? I can't fully think through everything I do, right? Too many decisions, executive function. Well, here's the thing. Remember, they were both in my office because their budgets were getting stretched. So that sort of intellectual proxy laziness was hurting those individuals. But it doesn't just hurt those individuals. It really hurts society. Let me walk you through why. Now, I could pick a lot of different sort of ways of intersecting this point about how if we sort of are intellectually lazy, if we just look at people superficially like the Pharisees and the scribes did, I can pick a lot of different ones, but I'm gonna pick one for simplicity's sake, okay? But understand, if you come up with a better one in your head that makes more sense to you, use that one. Today, I wanna talk about fashion. The reason I wanna talk about fashion is because that is one of those that I think it's really clear, whether or not you're a Democrat or a Republican, independent or something else, how all of us could agree fashion hurts humanity and hurts it deeply. And so let me start, and I'm gonna start with the ones the Democrats are gonna like the best, and then I'll move to the ones Republicans like the best. So if you're a Republican, bear with me. If you're a Democrat, when we get towards the end, bear with me. Got it? All right, so here's the thing. Democrats, those of you who care about the environment, that's not just Democrats, Republicans too, who care about global warming. Here's the thing. Fashion, number 3 polluter in the world. Number 1, energy production, so think power plants. Number 2, transportation, planes, boats, automobiles, things like that. Number 3, fashion. Why? Because the average piece of clothing gets worn 5 to 7 times in the first world, especially in the United States. Why does it only get worn 5 to 7 times? Because the trend changes by the 7th wear. And then people need to buy new clothing if they want to be trendy. Now you may think to yourself, well, those are superficial people. No, they're stuck in the same trap that the lawyer is stuck in. He's buying new suits because people look at him and say, you're not a good lawyer if you don't have a new suit. We're stuck in an arms race of fashion, making for the number 3 polluter. Now, here's the thing about pollution. If you go ahead and you put in environmental controls, it inevitably is gonna cost something, right? You make power production more expensive. People go cold the poor go cold in the winter and they're hot in the summer, right? Because they're gonna be the people most affected by any change in the cost of that electricity, right? If you go ahead and you clamp down on transportation, you make gasoline more expensive or anything else more expensive, you know who gets hurt? The poor. Why? Because the poor now have everything that's a little bit more expensive because just about everything in our economy's gotta be transported from point A to point B, right? Even if it's just from the farm to the table, still being moved. However, you could get rid of, and there are many scientists that back me up on this, like 80, 90% of all fashion if we just wear the clothes until they wore out, especially if we bought clothes that didn't wear out for a few years. If we didn't follow fashion, and you know who we hurt? Nobody. Because yeah, we all need clothes, but buying new shoes every few months at Walmart is a heck of a lot more, or is just as expensive as buying one pair of really good boots at Land's End. Right? They last you 20 years. They're gonna be cheaper than buying Brahma out at Walmart every month. Gonna be a lot less of a carbon footprint too. No one's actually hurt. The poor don't get trodden on for the sake of the environment. The clash is avoided. You don't have to make the hard decisions. You just have to go after fashion. Now, for those of you who are like, environment. Folks, who here likes fiscal responsibility? It's a lot cheaper to buy the high-end item that's gonna last 20 years than to buy every single year a new item. The only downside to doing that is that you can't switch it off, and therefore, if all of a sudden black is out and orange is in, then you still have black shoes. But if you decide you don't care because that's just a social construct, and if we all decided we don't care because it's just a social construct, guess what? We are all saving money. Y'all remember 2020? You remember how we all got stuck at home and therefore our savings rate skyrocketed? You know why? Because everyone wore sweatpants all the time. That's why you only saw this part of anyone on a Zoom meeting. That's why. Folks, you care about American jobs? You know what America does? You go look at the Land's End and the Columbia and you go there, you know where they make stuff? They make it here or Western Europe. You know that fast fashion that you get that's good for 5 wears and then there's holes in it? That is what's being made overseas in China. We have a huge competitive advantage if what you're talking about is quality. We don't if it's quantity. You guys are concerned about the Uyghur people who are enslaved in China, in the Xinjiang province, way out there in Western China? You're concerned about that. You know what they have them making? Fast fashion. Don't believe me. Go look at reports from the UN, from the US, from Western Europe. There's nonprofits. Go find your source of information that you like, right, left, or center. If you dig, you will find these things. This isn't partisan, even if it is sort of political. See, fashion, this idea that we've got to change the clothes or something's wrong with us, hurts us on an individual level, on a global level, on a national level too, in many different ways. And it's all just a social construct. If you don't judge your lawyer by their suit, they don't need a new suit. You don't judge your friend by their shoes, you don't need new shoes. If you decide you do not care that green is the new orange, then no one cares. This is one of those few things in life where we for free could liberate ourselves from a whole heck of a lot of problems by just deciding not to care. Deciding to change how I as an individual interact in the world. Be 1,000 rays of light to make the world a brighter place. See, what Jesus is getting at is this really fundamental thing. This fundamental idea that when we go ahead and judge others on a superficial proxy thing, that when we ask ourselves, does it actually make sense? We know in our hearts it doesn't. I could buy a great suit, doesn't make me a lawyer. No more than buying a whistle makes me a coach. And yet we do it. But with all of us doing it, it creates all these real harms to real people, ourselves included, as we pay for an arms race of clothing with our own money and our children's futures. Fashion's not the only place you can do this. You probably already thought of 7 or 8 other places where you'd rather not have to do X, Y, and Z. And you know what? If you would rather not have to do it, there's probably millions of others who also don't want to have to do it too. See, that's one of the powers of community, one of the powers of coming together, one of the ways in which faith can be political without being partisan, because nothing I said up there was partisan. I'd have Republicans and Democrats agreeing with me if we took all those topics on. Yeah, some of you guys might care more about one than another, but hey, we could all get on together about that, right? No one here is like a pro-Chinese, anti-environment, anti-fiscal, responsibility person, right? And yet, we all sort of fall in the trap, Democrat, Republican, and otherwise. So as you go out today, take a few minutes in your prayer life and ask yourself the specific about fashion. How are you contributing to that trap, to that treadmill, to those horrors? But don't stop there. Ask yourself what other ways, what other horrible things are happening, because we as a humanity, we as a nation, we as humans are accepting social constructs that harm ourselves for the sake of convenience or intellectual laziness of judging others on a superficial level. Amen.